Now, the wife of late anti-apartheid activist Ebrahim Ebrahim says her husband is one of the unsung heroes in South Africa. Shannon Ebrahim was speaking at the Cape Town book launch of Beyond Fear, a biography that tells the life and story of Ebrahim. The book also reveals his trial and cross-examination at Robben Island. The anti-apartheid activist and uMkhonto Sizwe operative was jailed on 3 counts of sabotage in 1964. Newzroom Afrika's Athi Mthongana spoke to his wife, Shannon.
Let's get into conversation with the wife of the late political activist and struggle stalwart, Mr. Ebrahim Ebrahim. Thank you so much, Shannon, for your time. You are saying that this is basically the third or the fifth book launch, and basically in this book we're expecting a never told story of this late veteran's life. We know that he was the former Deputy Minister of International Relations. He was heavily involved in the emancipation of the marginalized in South Africa. He spent a lot of time in Robben Island as well. But I want to know, when did you then meet him in all of this?
Thank you very much for having me. So I met him when we were already 4 years into democracy. I'd been working on the reform of the UN and at the UN, and I came to South Africa to prepare for the non-aligned movement that was happening in Durban. And I presented a paper to him in Parliament, and he was the discussant of my paper, because at that time he was the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament. So that's how I met him. And I went back to Canada, where I had been working for some time, and we kept in touch every day for almost a year. And then I eventually moved here and to live with him, basically.
He unfortunately passed away last year, but having pinned much of his life on this book, tell us about what to expect. Are we expecting to read some of the parts of his life that were not shared publicly?
I think largely he's been an unsung hero in South Africa. A lot of people outside of the ANC don't know his name. So for those, this is the cover of the book, Beyond Fear. And this is actually taken from the original footage of the video of him coming off of Robben Island, being released in '91. And what's interesting about him is that he's one of the only people, I think there's only one other person who was sentenced twice to Robben Island. The first time was when he had been charged with sabotage. He and Ronnie Kasrils were the founding members of MK and Natal, and they'd been blowing up pylons and apartheid installations, basically, and the judge sentenced him for 15 years, and he served it to the last day. So those are the very, very difficult years on Robben Island. You can imagine the deprivation. And then he was heading the ANC's underground political machinery from Swaziland in the 80s. And he was kidnapped from there by apartheid intelligence agents, tortured very badly in John Vorster Square, tried for high treason, and then the judge said, I think you didn't learn your lesson the first time, so I'm sentencing you to a further 20 years on Robben Island. And he actually was pleased with the verdict, because he had been facing the gallows. And that was a reality at the time. So he goes back to Robben Island, if you can imagine the dread, in 1989, and then wins his appeal 3 years later, because the appeal court says that the apartheid state did not have the jurisdiction to try him, given that he had been kidnapped from a foreign country. So he's released just months before everyone else is released from the island.
That's a true legacy. Thank you so much, Shannon, for your time. Well, we'll leave it there for now. If you want to grab a copy, I'm sure it will be available. This is, of course, the 5th book launch to try and bring to life, through words, the life of this late struggle stalwart who contributed immensely to the freedom of South Africans, particularly the marginalized South Africans. I'll leave it there for now. For Newzroom Afrika on channel 405, I'm Athi Mthongana in Cape Town.